Okay, Booker Who is back, and we're going to 99 where it's sold out, and here we go. Sold out. This is how I would have done things. 99. Cruiserweight title match to kick off the show. Billy Kidman versus Chris Jericho versus Juventud Guerrera versus Kaz Hayashi. This is one pinfall to a finish. Kidman goes over. He pins Kaz Hayashi. TV title. We go into that match. Bam Bam's made a challenge, and he's taking on Konnan, who was the TV champion at the time. Bam Bam goes over Konnan. Big guy. Basically, the point of this match is to re-establish Bam Bam. He hadn't won a belt in a while. Apart from ECW, so this is to try and establish him, build him up. I don't think at the time it was probably a good idea to put him over the US champion or anyone that time, but I really wanted to put the TV belt on him. Okay, and this is the beginning of a long reign for Bam Bam. WCW Tag Team Title Final. Now, we would have had a tag team tournament going on. The four Horsemen, Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko, they come out with Arn Anderson to take on Barry Windham and Bobby Duncan Jr. Benoit goes over Bobby Duncan Jr., making him submit to that. US title #1 contenders match. Lex Luger with Elizabeth to take on Booker T. Booker T goes over. Yeah, it would be a back and forth match. This is also to establish Booker T and build him up for an eventual world title run. That would not be happening this year, but probably further into the future. Hollywood Hogan and Scott Hall to take on Ric Flair and Steve Mongo McMicheal. With David Flair in the corner. We would establish at this point that David Flair is in training and is looking to debut sometime soon. But yeah, this would be the swan song for Steve Mongo McMicheal. I don't think that she showed up too much further after this. Hogan pins Flair. Guess why? Goldberg. Here we go, another match. Goldberg must win to get his return title match. Basically, Eric Bischoff has been doing some behind-the-scenes type stuff and has somehow gotten Goldberg as a rematch clause taken away from him, but JJ has sort of done some maneuvering of his own and has done this match. Goldberg taking on Scott Steiner. Goldberg goes over, but during this match, there would have been a couple of times that it looked like Scott Steiner might have won. He might have gotten some quick near pinfalls here. Basically, I try and get as much time out of that match as possible. World title. Kevin Nash take on DDP. The DDP does very well, but comes up short. Nash goes over. Superbrawl. We can continue on here. Good. Superbrawl, February 21st. Billy Kidman taking on Chavo Guerrero. Another challenger for the month thing. We're not doing a lot of storylines with the Cruiserweight division. It's just Billy Kidman. Billy Kidman is the champion, and we're looking to establish him and maybe possibly move him up the ladder a bit. TV title, Bam Bigalow taking on Perry Saturn, and yeah, we get some referee gets knocked down, a couple of weapon shots during this, maybe TV title kind of starting to look like it's going to turn into a hardcore division while Bam Bam's holding the belt. But yeah, Perry does very well, and also we cut to the back and we hear Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko talking back and forth, saying he looks really good, and we're not giving away anything yet, but that's sort of like what we're talking about. Here we go. Four Horsemen, Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko, come out for their match with Arn Anderson. And they're taking on the NWO Hollywood members Stevie Ray and Horace Hogan with Vincent. And here's what happens. Benoit makes Steve tap out. After the match, Stevie Ray and Horace come to blows, back and forth. The end of... And this is like essentially pretty much the end of the NWO Black and White. Stevie Ray takes off with Vincent into the sunset. US title match. Bret Hart versus Booker T versus Scott Hall versus Konnan in an elimination match. Booker T eliminates Scott Hall, Bret Hart eliminates Konnan, and Booker T wins with the Harlem Hangover on Bret Hart. Scott Steiner versus Diamond Dallas Page. Yeah, DDP goes over here because we need to reestablish some of our baby faces. Ric Flair with David Flair in his corner, taking on Hollywood Hogan with Buff Bagwell in his corner. Hogan wins after David Flair accidentally hits Rick with brass knuckles. And this is played off as an accident, but possibly not. Kevin Nash versus Goldberg in the rematch. And Goldberg wins, but by DQ. Okay, and we established the new Wolfpack. Now, Hollywood Hogan, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Scott Steiner, Buff Bagwell, Horace Hogan, and Lex Luger. Uncensored. Cruiserweight title match. Billy Kidman taking on the newcomer Mikey Whipwreck. Kidman goes over. Raven's rules match. Raven taking on Hack. Hack, for those of you who don't know, is essentially Sandman, so we just have one of them going at it. And we do essentially what they did with the three-way, except this time Bam Bam's not involved. Yeah. TV title, Bam Bam takes on Rick Steiner. Bam Bam goes over. Here we go. Chris Jericho has been looking for a tag team partner to go after the tag belts because he's been unsuccessful. He's lost the TV title. He didn't win the Cruiserweight title. It sold out. So he's been looking for. He's been trying out new tag partners, going up against certain people, and he's managed to con his way into getting a tag team title shot. So he's taking on Four Horsemen members Benoit and Malenko, and we can go over their rivalry that they had. And he's picked Lenny Lane as his tag team partner. And I think this really works because two blonde guys, and maybe we can nickname them the International Blondes, but this is just to establish them. Benoit makes Jericho tap. So yeah, it's not a bad match. It looks fairly competitive, but yeah, as I said, Benoit managed to get the crossface on. Here we go. Ric Flair taking on David Flair. Now, David Flair has flipped, and he's kind of hanging out with the NWO now, and he's not a full-fledged member, but we've seen him wearing NWO shirts, and this has made Rick realize that maybe that brass knuck shot at the last pay-per-view wasn't an accident. And David maintains that it was, but he wishes that it wasn't, because we can bring up some of the past, and they're saying, you weren't there for me, daddy, blah blah blah, or maybe not dad, but maybe not daddy, but dad. And yeah, we can bring up that stuff, but he's not a member of the NWO, but he's been seen hanging out with Buff and Stevie Ray, and no, not Stevie Ray, Buff, Scott Steiner, and they've gotten into his head, sort of thing, and this is the story that goes on. But yeah, that's been happening, and David Flair goes over but with a really crappy roll up on his dad, and this is just to try and establish him, but it comes off as a very much a fluke, and we can possibly even have some interference by some NWO members in there, but basically just to try and establish David Flair as a talent. Because I actually think as a character he was pretty good. It's just his wrestling skills were a lot to be desired. Okay. We're in the last days of the Wolfpack here. Hollywood Hogan, Buff Bagwell returning to action. I think would have been by this time Scott Steiner with Lex Luger, who was injured at the time, so he's just outside. Taking on Diamond Dallas Page, Chris Kanyon, and Kurt Hennig. DDP goes over by pinning Hogan. We're going to try and establish him. Steel cage match. And this is Goldberg's last chance to win the belt. And Goldberg versus Kevin Nash. And what do you know? Nash goes over after sneaking in some handcuffs and cuffing Goldberg to the cage. So again, we have Nash go over, but it's sabotage, so you can go, damn it. And again, this is the stipulation of this match is he can't compete for the world title as long as Nash is the heavyweight champion of the world. Now, we've done the rematch, we've done the cage match, so I think people would be kind of getting sick of this in a way, but like we got to leave that behind for now, and we're going to bring in some new people. Okay, so that brings us to Spring Stampede. I might cut this off soon because this has been going fairly long, and yeah, this will probably be the last one. Billy Kidman taking on Psychosis. Psychosis goes over because I really like Psychosis. I think he's a great talent, and I think Billy's had a decent run with the Cruiserweight belt. Plus, I think the Cruiserweight belt needs a little bit more of quick title changes than maybe some of the other belts. Because we've got a lot of Cruiserweights there, a lot of really talented guys, a lot of guys deserving that belt. And Psychosis is one of them. Here we go, TV title. Bam Bigalow taking on Stevie Ray with Vincent and Horace in there. Bam goes over Horace, pinning him. Again, this is a little bit more rougher, more of a brawl situation than anything else. Here we go, and tag belts. Chris Benoit and Dean Malenko with Arn Anderson defending the belts against Wolfpack members Scott Steiner and Buff Bagwell with Lex Luger in their corner. We can have a little bit of a brawl outside between Lex and Arn Anderson. Then we can have the commentators talk about the history between those two. Lex being a former Horseman, Arn being one of the mainstays of the Horsemen. He was in every incarnation along with Ric Flair. And Benoit can make Buff tap because I want to eventually have Scott Steiner break away, do some cool stuff with him. US title, Booker T versus Vampiro. Now, another talent I like is Vampiro. So I'd have these two have a good competitive match, but Booker T comes out on top. Ravens rules. Again, another person that David Flair's been hanging around with is Raven, and this leads to these two having a match. Ravens rules, and Ravens just says some shit to Ric Flair. What do you know? Bam backstage, leading to a match. We don't need to do too much with it, but basically we'd only need a couple of weeks of 1 or 2 weeks of build up for this match to come about, because all we need to see is a couple of situations during the night. Raven hanging out with David Flair. The following week it happens again, and Rick loses his mind, go on after him. because I would have Rick sort of wanting to reconnect with his son, and basically the match of the previous pay-per-view was to try and knock some sense into him, but it didn't work out that way. His son sort of got lucky. Here we go, Goldberg versus Scott Hall. Well, he can't get one outsider, so he's going after the other. So he's going after Scott Hall. Goldberg says, well, I can't have a match with you for the title. I'm going to hurt your best friend. And basically that's what it comes down to. Goldberg just goes nuts. He spears Scott Hall once, twice, 3 times. Jackhammer. And then he goes after him again. And what do you know? Pulls out, goes under the ring, pulls out a taser, goes after him. Nash is losing it. He comes out. Bam, bam, bam. Rest of the NWO. Bam, into the ring. They beat him up. And Goldberg he struggles to his feet, but he's got a smile on his face because he's like, I got you, Nash. I got you. I got you. Then here we go. Special referee Randy Savage. We do the 4-way. Kevin Nash, Sting, Hogan, and DDP. Sting makes Hogan tap out. What? That should be... that's wrong. Sorry. Then Sting gets pinned. This is an elimination rules match. Sting pinned by Nash. And then DDP pins Kevin Nash with a Dunkum cover. Bam. Okay, that's 17 minutes. I think we can leave it there, and we'll be back. What's the next one? And we'll be back with Slamboree. Yeah, probably tomorrow for that one. Maybe later on today. I don't know. Let's see how I feel.